PSG have just battered Madrid 4-0. They rotate like mad, they press very high. They have Dembele playing false nine, pulling defenders out of shape. This Sunday is going to be absolute chaos. How do we even cope against the best team, the most complete, fluid team in world football right now? Well, my friends, I'm going to show you 3 lineups we could use. Each lineup is built for a different purpose to cope and to combat Paris Saint-Germain. So if you guys feel like we can do the impossible because that's just what Chelsea do, then hit that like button right now, my friends. Hope you guys enjoy, and let's break down each lineup. We start off with the brave first 11. As you guys have seen, Delap up front, supporting him, Palmer, Joao Pedro, Neto. A midfield of Enzo and Moises, and defense, Cuckoo, Colwell, Chalobah, Reece James, and Sanchez in goal. Now, as we know, this is the starting lineup, but with Enzo Maresca, our lineup evolves depending on the game state we are in. So you imagine that one of the fullbacks is going to invert in midfield, and I actually see 2 possibilities from this brave lineup. To start with the first one, this is the super brave. We have no respect for Paris Saint-Germain, and we feel confident that offensively we can cause you problems. It involves Delap up front. You'll see Kvaratskhelia pushing high and wide. This would allow for Pedro and Cole Palmer to tuck inside to form that box attack, allowing these guys to receive in those interior channels as well. Neto holds the width on the opposite flank. Enzo supports Caicedo in that pivot, and you have that flat back 3 of Chalobah, Colwell, and Reece James. Now, this is the PSG we're coming for you lineup, right? Because you have Pedro and Delap who offer you aggressive high pressing. And the strategy behind this lineup could be one of the best things to cope against PSG is to try and disrupt their build-up play. Try and disrupt their rotations from forming before they even develop. And one of the only teams that struck fear in Paris Saint-Germain this entire year was Aston Villa in the second leg game in the Champions League, because once they had nothing left to lose, they went for it. They pressed aggressively. They overpowered Paris Saint-Germain's midfield. And if they had another 10-15 minutes left, they had momentum on their side where they could have mounted the impossible comeback. It was a very interesting victory for Aston Villa, and you haven't seen too many teams kind of use that blueprint against PSG recently. Now, they have lost games, but they don't really count in my opinion. They lost games after they secured Ligue 1, and of course, there was a PSG team before Kvaratskhelia and after Kvaratskhelia, and we are in the Kvaratskhelia reality right now. Having Delap and Joao Pedro, their intense defensive work rate higher up, could be a useful outlet and weapon for us to confidently try and press and disrupt that build-up. Interestingly though, there are other things that we could do. And I'm looking at Hakimi down that right-hand side. The guy has scored over 10 goals this season. Absolutely devastating. One of the most fearsome players to play down the right flank. And interestingly, my idea is that if Kvaratskhelia is offering that supportive run to try and just go up against Hakimi, the idea would be to have a Joao Pedro who's just receiving in those interior channels, occupying Hakimi. Could the strategy here be to try and limit and contain those overlapping runs a little bit? Because PSG's attack on the right hand side is direct, but on the left hand side it's a lot more controlled. Could also see Pedro and Cole Palmer picking up those interesting positions on the left channel and the right channel. In our 3+2 build-up, there's always someone dropping deep from the left side or the right side to help us play through a midfield. Could that be a way to try and get past and play through Paris Saint-Germain's press? Because both players could easily be those outlets for us. And then we can create and pose a lot of interesting attacking questions. But obviously, this lineup is just so offensively strong that naturally we become more susceptible defensively. And the big weakness would naturally be there is no Lavia in this lineup. It's Enzo Fernandez. And Enzo Fernandez is just not the best ball winner compared to pressing impacts. There'd be too much responsibility on Caicedo. And I'd fear that whenever Dembele or Doué are dropping deep, you're going to be a man less in midfield essentially. So this goes to my second lineup out of the Brave one, and maybe the idea would be to anchor the bravery. And to do that, you would have Kvaratskhelia tucking inside the midfield alongside Moses Caicedo, with Enzo Fernandez forming that box attack. That way, Pedro is the wide outlet on the left-hand side, and Neto the opposite on the right. At least this way, we don't have to force Kvaratskhelia into ridiculous foot races to try and catch up with Hakimi, because it's not going to work. This way, Moises Caicedo has a partner in crime when it comes to knowing when to trigger the press, because outside of just knowing the triggers, these guys both have the instincts to know when it's the best time to trigger the press, and you need to have both these qualities in tandem. Having Kvaratskhelia tucking inside makes you feel maybe a bit more confident, especially when you know that Dembele is going to be dropping in deep to receive balls behind our defensive midfield. And I kind of want to contain how we kind of don't lose that overload battle in the middle, because with Dembele dropping in behind, that forms a 3v2. And if you have Enzo there over Kvaratskhelia, I'm going to be a lot more fearful, because that side of defending isn't necessarily Enzo's forte. Kvaratskhelia and Caicedo communicate really well defensively together, and I don't think it's the same between Moy and Enzo. And with Reece James as part of that defensive three, yeah, I want to see what Kvaratskhelia does against him, because Kvaratskhelia has not played against a player like Reece James with that frame, that physicality, that low center of gravity. Reece James has made a career for himself locking up some of the best attacking wingers in Europe, so that will be a fascinating battle. So this would be the brave lineup to take the game to Paris Saint-Germain. The next one is the realistic 11, and this for me is probably the 11 we should be using against Paris Saint-Germain. You're seeing Joao Pedro up front, supporting him Neto, Enzo and Cole Palmer. A midfield of Caicedo and Reece James, and defense of Cuckoo, Cole, Jalaba, Gusto and Sanchez in goal. This would turn into our normal 3-2-5, and it would be Cuckoo on the left, Cole in the middle, Jalaba on the right hand side, Caicedo and Reece James pivot, and the attack would consist of Neto holding width on the left, Enzo and Palmer forming that box attack, Gusto having the overlapping license to support attacks when the spaces open up, and Joao Pedro playing the interesting role up front. Now, in my opinion, this could potentially be a smart lineup, because it's prioritizing technical control and intelligent pressing over just going for it and showing your hand too early, because you don't want to be doing that. Obviously, the press would be a hybrid press. It would be a mixture of man-to-man and also zonal protection, because we have to be careful about the counter-attacking threat of Paris Saint-Germain. Now, in this lineup, I'm really looking at Gusto and Cole Palmer, because my idea is, why don't you have Palmer up against Nuno Mendes, but not in the normal way you're thinking. We know that Mendes sits a bit deeper as Hakimi goes upright. So Palmer technically could have a bit of time to dictate things down that right-hand side. And here's how it would work essentially, because you're forcing Mendes into defending. Because if Palmer picks up those smart positions to try and bait out Nuno Mendes out from holding his position on that left-hand side, what are you doing? Well, you're creating spaces for Malo Gusto, who is a lot better on the touchline, to play his game, to create the overloads and the overlap down the right-hand side. You're posing questions to Kvaratskhelia. Yes, the guy's a phenomenal worker when it comes to tracking his markers and his runners. But having Palmer tucking inside a bit, freeing spaces for Gusto to overlap, that could be interesting, because the most important thing is Reece James, who's playing in midfield, can also support Gusto defensively in behind whenever Gusto gets forward. Because with this lineup, you're respecting that Paris Saint-Germain counter threat at all times, and you always have a man ready to be on the last lines in case you get played through. Another idea I have behind this too is that maybe you're looking to disrupt those Paris Saint-Germain triangles, because as I've said, PSG are direct down the right, more controlled on the left-hand side. And maybe a way to disrupt that super fluid attacking three is to try and have Kvaratskhelia not as involved in the game, because you're posing questions trying to force him to make those backtracking runs to catch Gusto. Now, obviously, Gusto won't get forward for fun when he feels like it. It will come in moments, working in tandem, and this could be a way for us to maintain the width, try and disrupt that PSG defense structure, and we could disrupt it even more too by Joao Pedro playing that false 9 role. Maybe we could look to try and bait out that Paris Saint-Germain defense, just how Ousmane Dembele and co will do the same thing against our defense. We've seen this working quite well when he's already dropped deep to link up with your Palmers, Enzos and co. But by doing that, you could also free maybe Pedro Neto in behind as that wide outlet for the switch balls or balls in behind, or just direct balls to try and get PSG in transitional moments down the left-hand side. That could be interesting. But I think realistically, I'm expecting Reece James, our captain, to be playing alongside Moises Caicedo. I think one of the big reasons behind this is that when we then drop into our defensive phase, we can form a back five with a 4 in front and 1 up front. I think this is better than using 2 lines of 4, not when you're playing against a false 9 system, because you'll just forever be susceptible to getting overloaded centrally, and then PSG will pull you apart and destroy you out wide. You can see Reece James forming that back 3 with Korbel and Jalaba, and Gusto and Cucurella holding with either side. This way at least we can go man to man. This way at least we have Palmer and Neto offering defensive support alongside the fullbacks. This way we can keep a bit of compactness and defensive structure in the middle. For me, this is the most responsible way to approach the game, because we can then turn towards using strong options off the benches and your Nicos, your Liam Delaps, Andre Santos, Tosin's, and even more if there's that possibility to have something to protect and something to lead. We have enough men to maintain possession, we have enough men to pick intelligent moments when to press, when to attack, because against PSG you're not going to park the bus against them and have them come onto you for full 90 minutes. That would make no sense. This is control, and it would surprise me if Maresca did not pick this exact lineup. And for the surprise lineup, this would be a classic 4-3-3. Maresca's not been opposed to using something like this. In this lineup, you have Neto, Joao Pedro, and Palmer up front. Behind would be Enzo, Caicedo, and I'm going for Reece James in midfield again because he's just been starting more games than Andre Santos. I don't think Maresca is ready yet to use Santos in a game like this, even though he's played pretty well against PSG in the past. Defense would be Cucu, Korbel, Jalaba, Gusto, and Sanchez in goal. This is a pretty balanced lineup. Of course, you have midfield support in the midfield 3, the ability for protection against wide stretching. There is positional discipline here as well. And obviously, Reece James offers a bit of power and strength, because I do think overpowering that PSG midfield physically, they can be overpowered if you do it correctly, if you trigger things properly. You know, this is where things to be absolutely key. And I just think that with Reece James as well, he's going to offer us that just flexible protection for times when he needs to double up alongside Gusto, for times when he might have to push up a little bit higher to try and put crosses inside the box or support a Cole Palmer, vice versa. There's a lot of fluidity defensively by having Reece James here. But most importantly, it's that power that you're keeping in your midfield. Pedro would be a very useful player and have a lot of responsibility here, because he is essentially the glue compared to maybe a Liam Delap being the guy that pins defenses back and offers that physical edge. I think maybe against PSG, teams like this, sometimes to get a result, you can't just rely upon tactics solely. You have to also show what you're about as a football player. You have to stand up in these moments. If the opportunity is there to take a strike or take responsibility, can you do that? Can you do that? And I think this lineup offers a balance between players who could offer that, as well as having enough defensive support which respects Paris Saint-Germain's threats. PSG make overloads for fun, out wide, in the central areas. Their rotations are the best right now, but this lineup is pretty well balanced. You have a defense that has the pace to at least try and offer something against Paris Saint-Germain's attack. This is why Jalaba is in every single lineup over Tosin, because there's going to be certain times where Korbel has to keep his position, and maybe one of the defenders on either side of him will have to confidently know when to be proactive and push up to engage when the moments obviously materialize. With their wide threat, I think you always want to have Cucurella and Gusto in pretty safe, responsible positions where they're not getting too exposed, where the distances between themselves and Paris Saint-Germain's wingers aren't too wide. And if anything happens, at least there's some recovery pace you can turn to. Listen, it's all talks, it's all theory, because we have one of the most fearsome tests we've had in a very, very long time. I think this PSG team is as good as that Barcelona team under Pep Guardiola. When I'm talking about perfect synchronicity, understanding, fluidity. PSG are the only team I've seen in the last 10 years that are playing at that 11 out of 10 level. So we're going to need more than just tactics, but tactics, lineups, they give us a platform and a chance at least. So my friends, they're the ways I see us playing against Paris Saint-Germain. Share your thoughts and opinions. What lineup do you agree with? And if you don't agree with any of them, let us know what you would do. Thank you for watching, and I will see you guys with more big build up for PSG